is going to show a dissection of a clam, the Phylum Mollusca. And something that really blows my mind about mollusks is how much variation there is among the different classes of mollusks. So bivalve mollusks or pelecypods is this particular class. And so one of the things that we'll look at is just the features that make it a mollusk. But anyway, good old familiar clam. And so you can see the kind of growth pattern in the shell. And then there's this notable hump right here, and that's a good kind of landmark. It's called an umbo. And the axis of the umbo tends to point anteriorly, so axis and anterior, that's how I remember it. It also tends to be a little bit closer to the anterior side. So, so we have the anterior part of the clam, the posterior. Dorsal is where the umbo is, and ventral. And the two parts of the shell, they're called valves, so bivalve, two shells, are held together by this dorsal ligament right here, which has been cut to make it possible to, it's not the only thing that was cut, but you'll see what else was cut in a second, to separate one valve from the other. The other thing that had to be cut in this process was, let me see if I can orient it. There we go. Okay, beautiful. So which way is anterior now with all that moving around? The umbo pointing that way. So this is anterior, posterior, dorsal, and ventral. And so we have this posterior adductor muscle and the anterior adductor muscle. So adduct means, right, pulling together, add like together, pulling together, adduction. So the adductor muscle is going to be a muscle. It's going to attach on both sides. It's been detached. So let me lift this up so you can see. Ah, there it goes. Nice. So the anterior adductor muscle, it's going to go all the way through, and when that muscle contracts, it's going to pull the valves together. Same thing for the posterior adductor. It's going to pull the valves together. Let me see if I can get this back in the right position. Ish. Más o menos, that's it. Kinda, sorta. All right, so that's good. Now, this little thing, this little flappy thing right here, that is the mantle. And that's one of the things that makes a mollusk a mollusk. So the mantle is this layer of tissue here. It actually secretes the shell. So it actually is making that shell. And inside of the mantle is a cavity. And inside of that cavity, there are gills, right? Another molluscan characteristic is this big foot right here, the muscular foot. Okay, we'll get there in a second. Okay, so for a second I want to put this mantle down. I think that's the left mantle. Yeah, I want to put this left mantle down because I want to show you something that I'm getting a really good view of right here. Now remember, I'm rotating that so posterior is toward the camera. Okay, and do you see how this left mantle by the adductor muscle here, this left mantle and the right mantle come together here, and they're actually kind of welded together right there. They're fused together right there. So they make like this opening, and that opening is called the posterior, or excuse me, siphon. They're both posterior siphons. This one is too. So this one is the dorsal siphon or excurrent siphon. Notice that there's also, like, can you see that pretty well over there, cameraman? Can you see this tube right here with that little nipple opening right there? If I lift that up, is that showing? Right there. So that is the rectum and the anus. Okay, I have to, if I orient it so I can see it, the camera doesn't see it. Okay, now, so hopefully that comes out, the rectum and the anus. If not, we'll do it again. And then here, right, the incurrent siphon. This is just, you can see this is just the two folds of the mantle, right, the right mantle and the left mantle coming together. So water is going to get pulled in here by ciliary action on the gills mostly, okay, and then water is going to enter the mantle cavity, go over to the gills. There's a whole bunch of pores up here on the dorsal side of the gills, and the water is going to go back over this way and then go out that way. Okay, the posterior siphon with poop going out at in the same current. Urine's also going to be manufactured up here in these soft tissues. So I think that's what you can see without really kind of getting more into the guy. So I'm going to put this guy back down. Oh, we forgot to look at the mouth. So before we put that down, we're going to see it in the other one, but it's pretty cool on this one too. So we looked at the mouth. Now let's come to the anus. Let's come to the anterior side, and we have the anterior adductor, and just under the anterior adductor is where the mouth is. And then these labial palps on either side. We'll get a good look at those at the next view. Okay, now so going to this guy.